Claire, also big challenges for small business. New South Wales government apparently, according to Andrew Clennell, my colleague, planning to announce this JobSaver program in the next few days. They've called on the feds to contribute 50-50. No sign from the government. Simon Birmingham, my guest earlier in the program, that they're willing to do that just now.
Well, I think if the federal government is inclined to put more financial assistance into small businesses in New South Wales, it needs to be part of a broader plan. And I guess this is where sort of the stitching comes undone for the federal government. We remembering last year, the Australian public had to put their faith in the Morrison government. The Prime Minister said repeatedly, we have a plan. Every time that there was a call on the government, should you be involved in remedying this risk? Should you be involved in this initiative? Scott Morrison repeated time and time again that he had a plan and that we all just had to stick with his plan in reopening the economy now and living with the disease. Now, the time is here. We are at that point, and this plan that the Prime Minister is, supposedly been fine-tuning for months on end is really in its, naked show here, pretty undercooked. We've got pharmacies. There's 5,500 pharmacies in New South Wales. Only 700 of them can get enough RAT tests to participate in the government scheme to provide them to seniors. We've got kids going back to school that have only become eligible to get their vaccine in order to return to school on the 10th of January. That's not a lot of time. We've got entire workforces hemorrhaging because there is no plan or no appropriate plan around the isolation of those close contacts. But fundamentally, the Morrison government is supposed to be a government that supports the open economy, where we get on with our lives here, the late to shut down, early to release mantra. And we're at that point now, and our economy is suffering, and the Scott Morrison government is really, the sum of their decision-making is what's caused that here.
So,
and I think,
Fiona, do you think the federal government, should the federal government back this New South Wales plan, Fiona?
Look, I think the federal government should back the New South Wales plan, but then that goes a step further. I mean, if it is a 50-50 in New South Wales, I think the same deal should be offered across every state and every territory should the states and territories take that plan up. But the challenge you have then on the federal government when you look at, say, Western Australia, I mean, today on Sky News, we saw heads of the mining sector coming out and saying, look, we have massive understaffing issues now because we've been closed down in Western Australia for so long. The McGowan government will sit there and say, oh, yes, we've all survived so well because of mining. Now, that is coming to a junction now that has to be dealt with. So does the federal government have to foot the bill for decisions made by state premiers? And this is the challenge that the federal government has, and the federal government is going to have to front the Australian public at the end of April with the budget as to how much the last 12 months has cost the federal budget. But they don't necessarily have control of all the levers. And that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges that our federation has as to who pays for what and how things are paid for when the federal government is stuck footing the bill for what states have done. Now, I might be a bit biased to say, sure, New South Wales, I'm from New South Wales, so yeah, pay 50-50, that would be great. But there has to be comparable deals that are offered around all of the states so that there is fairness for all Australians. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge, that the federal government can't just jump in and say, yes, absolutely, until the fullness of this discussion is really had across every state and territory.
Fiona and Claire, great to see you both to start this year. A big few months ahead as we lead into the federal election. Nice to chat as always. See you soon.